Okay, I'll say good evening. I have 6 o'clock and I want to be very conscious of everyone's time. So thank you for being with us. And I do want to ensure that we have a quorum for our meeting before we begin. So I'm not sure if anyone can confirm that for me because I only see 12 people on my screen.
Councilwoman, this is Rita Talley. Would you like to do a quick roll call?
We can, but give me just a second so I can find that information.
Jane, do you have your agenda?
No. I have the number. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Okay, here is Mariana Adams with us.
She's jumping on. She had another prior commitment. She'll jump on at 6:30.
Okay. Clinton Hughes. Okay. Is Councilwoman Hammond with us? Okay. Councilman
Clinton
Todd.
Hughes is here.
I saw your name.
Oh, sorry.
Is Councilman Stone with us?
I'm here.
Perfect. Councilman Mark Stone Cipher. Okay. Representative Chelsea Branna. Sade. I saw her. Jump on. Taz. Is Taz with us? Okay. Miguel. Lieutenant Miguel. Okay. Major Butler, I see you. Dr. Benjamin. Major Collins with us. Okay. Miss Valerie Couch, I see you. Raven Crisp. Pastor Crudup. Okay, you know what? I'm going to say we're here. I'm not going through all those names, y'all. Come on. Okay. I am going to trust that everyone is here that is a part of this committee. So first, good evening. And I don't want to waste any more time because I know we have a lot of things to discuss. I do need to read our video conference meeting information. And I want to, again, thank you for joining this conference meeting. We do have a few announcements to make regarding this teleconference meeting. So if the video conference is disconnected at any time during the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the audio and video connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 15 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be placed on the special meeting agenda for October 29th at 6 p.m. via video conference. The agenda and documents are located on okc.gov. And anyone wishing to speak about an agenda item, please text 405-757-4429. Please provide your name, phone number, the item number, and the reason you wish to comment. Speakers will be allowed 2 minutes to comment. So I do ask that all participants keep your phones or your screens on mute until you are recognized to speak, and committee members will be allowed to ask questions or comment at any time during the meeting. And I do want for those who are fairly new or have not used the portion of raising your hand in the screen, please know that you can see it you see up top where participants or more, depending on where your screen, where it may be located, there is a feature for you to raise your hand or a chat for you to ask questions or for us to communicate in that way. So with that being said, I believe I already called the meeting to order. If not, I call it to order now. Thank you. And again, welcome to everyone. And I just want to say thank you to all of our task working groups that have met. And I know there were a lot of great things and details discussed, and also The chairs and co-chairs for those working groups have also been determined, and I know we'll go into more information about that. And with that, I'll ask if our other co-chairs have any words. But before you go, Dr. Benjamin, I do want to let everyone on this call know as well. We had an opportunity to present the Human Rights Task Force information for an interim study that Senator Young is doing in reestablishing, should I say, the Human Rights Commission for our state. So we were able to present the information of how we are working to reestablish ours on the city level, and gave all the great information of what we're doing and the work that's being done. So that will play a part in the conversations to come for the state human rights commission to possibly be reinstated. So I wanted to thank Senator Young for allowing us the opportunity. And I also want to thank Dr. Benjamin and Mariana and also Dr. Hughes for the work that they've done in getting us thus far, and using that information is what we were able to present on this past Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, at this interim study. So thank you again to all of our co-chairs for the work that you all are doing.
I'll also keep my remarks brief. Thank you again for agreeing to serve on this task force. And we do have a lot to do tonight, so I will not waste any more time, but welcome.
Okay, with that, we have our item 3 is the meeting notes, and you should have received the agenda as well as the notes and minutes attached to that. Are there any questions or any conversations that we need to add to that part of our minutes?
Madam Chairman, I move adoption of the minutes.
I have someone that has moved.
Unless we have a quorum, we can't have a vote. So by
Do we have
acclamation, you could accept it. We don't. We have 20 so far that I've counted. So
how many do we set the quorum?
25. So
okay,
by acclamation, you could receive them.
Okay, we'll receive the minutes. Thank you, Ms. Rita, for that. We will go ahead and receive the minutes, and maybe if possible, and correct me because I don't know how that works. If we come back at the end, if we have a quorum, maybe we can vote on it, or do we not need to? Okay, well, we'll move on. Item number 4 is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that is going to be presented, I'm assuming, by Dr. Benjamin instead of Mariana.
Actually, I talked to Mariana and she said that we can use the link to just read them. And so it's offered more as just a document so that we can see how human rights are considered and thought about across the globe and how the UN decided to adopt them. And I will talk about it a little bit in my presentation. But
okay, perfect. And to add to that, I will say our council received information from a resident, I'm assuming a resident of Oak, I'm not sure, I can't remember if they're from Oklahoma City, that is asking that we acknowledge and recognize Intersex Month for October. So obviously that is a human rights issue as well. So if you have not heard of Intersex, as far as our youth are concerned, Intersex Youth Awareness Month, I would ask that you all research that and we can all be more familiar with that topic and how it relates to our young people that live among us in our society today, that we definitely want to make sure we are giving them their equal rights and acknowledging their presence and how they represent themselves. Now we will move on to item 5, which is a summary of the Human Rights Task Force questionnaire. Dr. Benjamin.
Sure. Thank you all again for responding to that. Again, we heard from about 27 task force members, so you have it in your packet, but I am going to still just go through a very brief presentation of the results. And again, in my normal life, I wouldn't present 27 respondents, but this is a questionnaire and this is for our task force. So I think it's a good way to think about where we are currently. And hopefully as we move through it, you can sort of hear for yourself or see for yourself where there's some consensus that has already been built, and then thinking about as we move forward, what are some things that we're going to have to discuss And hopefully the work coming out of the working groups will help us answer any questions or really refine our plan as we move forward. So let me try to act like I can use technology and share my screen. All right, but then I'm not presenting. Hold on. Okay, well, we're gonna have to just do it this way. Oh, nope, we're not. Hold on, sorry, guys. Let's see, present. And now share. Zach, do I need to present and then share?
You should. I saw your screen, so if you were presenting, you were sharing your screen and then just run the PowerPoint. There you go.
I know, but
And
now.
then if you go to present, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, thank you, yes. Okay, so sorry, thank you all for your patience as I deal with my technology issues. Again, so we did hear from 27 of you all, so thank you again. Just getting started, as I was just mentioning, for 5 people, they offered the definition, the UN definition of human rights as their definition. And so as you can see, that includes human rights are inherent to all human beings, right? Oh no, sorry. So regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights include the rights to liberty, life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination. So that was what some people said. And then I tried to just quantify other answers. So 4 people did add sexual orientation, sexuality. And again, we do know that that's not in the current statute, but we do know that Norman has added it to their HRC. So I think this is an area open for discussion. 8 different respondents mentioned dignity and respect / humanity, just that's a basic human right that we are treated humanely. And then 3 people mentioned ability and accessibility, right? So we want to think about where that fits into our definition as we move forward. How do residents in the city of Oklahoma City currently report human rights grievances? So 7 people correctly mentioned the Attorney General's office. That is the current process that is used. 8 people were honest, thank you for that, and said they didn't know. I think many people don't know. 3 people did mention the police department. 2 people mentioned going to the city council, and 1 person said a human rights commission. So someone was optimistic in their survey, their questionnaire responses. We asked, what are some of the primary barriers to the exercise of human rights in Oklahoma City? I thought about the answers and broke them down into 2 different categories. 12 people mentioned things that we might consider structures, right? So the policies maybe are a barrier, a budget, right? That we don't, maybe there's some financial constraints, discrimination generally, classism, racism, language, right? How is the information made available to our residents? And then poverty, right? Those are more structural. But then people mention sort of this lack of information as another thing, right? That we don't know the mechanisms, or a lack of education, or a lack of support system, or that there's no formal process. So again, the consensus here sort of is that there are some structures, right? And the fact that we don't currently have a human rights commission might be a barrier, but also that even if we did, it would be really important that people understand the process by which a human rights commission works if it were to be reestablished. So then in trying to think about, well, what can we do to remove some of those barriers? Obviously, education, training, provide information. Some people said collecting data and doing some research. People did mention community-centered mechanisms, right? That it should come from within the community. People mentioned allocating funds, getting some budget allocation. Obviously 3 people said get an HRC. So again, people are being optimistic. People mentioned accountability and then transparency, which again, I think some of these themes are going to come up as we have our discussion. What is the process? We might think about what's the role there of transparency? How do we hold people accountable? Those types of things. So when we asked what role do you think the task force or Human Rights Commission should have in addressing the barriers, people said that naming some specific powers, they do think that a Human Rights Commission should educate, right? It can mediate, investigate, collect data, adjudicate or recommend policies, and coordinate outreach, right? And so in that sense, people were very specific about what they think that a Human Rights Commission should do if it was reestablished. And then in asking about whether or not the task force would have an ongoing role, I know that there are rules about this, so we sort of just asked this question and trying to think about it. About guaranteeing access to basic human rights. People said, 10 people of the 27 said that the Human Rights Commission should guarantee access, equal access. 3 people said it should have a limited role. Again, 3 people were honest and said they were unsure. And then 2 people said that it can do both, right? And so again, this might be a place where we come back for discussion later. Sorry, this is where I think that there is a rule and Rita knows it, but we still asked about it, so I wanted to present on it. Again, it's pretty split 50-50 that people want to abolish the task force once we sort of present and decide to move forward with an HRC or not. Some people thought that the task force should continue. And then 3 people did say that maybe the task force could continue with an advisory role. And again, I should put an asterisk here that that might not be possible, but I just wanted to report what people responded to our questionnaire. Next, we wanted to know what people thought the role for staff should be, right? And so one thing that was said was to fully fund the staff, fully fund a staff and HRC, right? So that's a budget question. People do think there should be staff to support the HRC. So I think that's something we need to think about is what does that ask look like? What does that budget look like? Mostly because we sort of recognize that there are real knowledge bases with the staff. And obviously, even if you were to form a Human Rights Commission, people would just be volunteers. And so that would be sort of that connection, that firming, that institutional knowledge. Again, provide guidance with administrative support, connect the HRC to the mayor, which if it is established as a commission, that relationship is already built in, and then offering help with reporting. And then finally, I think this is really important that people picked up on this, right? That some of the human rights things might be, there might be some sensitivity or privacy issues. So helping us with the data collection might also be a good use of staff. Again, keeping in mind though, that first bullet that obviously staff requires budget. So we'll need to think about that for our proposal. What processes do you see as effective in addressing the human rights, in Oklahoma City, right? People sort of mentioned the things that they mentioned earlier, right? That they would want a commission that can legislate and recommend policy, obviously run investigations, collect data, do research, educate and train, right? That sort of, that component of it, and then collaborate and do outreach, right? So we see some consensus from earlier questions that what should a HRC do? What do you think is effective? Some overlap there. And then also, again, this is important to some things that we've thought about. Are the current protections adequate? 8 people said that the current protections were appropriate. 3 people said they're appropriate for now, but let's revisit it later, which I think might be a good point. 5 people said that they wanted to lobby for additional protections, and they specifically mentioned sexual orientation, which we saw earlier in the definition, and then lobby for different protections, but also people weren't specific. So there is at least 8 people thought that we should be asking for more, and 5 of them were specific in that request. When trying to think about what would be the process that we would, if the commission is reestablished, what would be the process? People were pretty clear about what they think should happen, right? So people should know the dates, who to contact, where they need to show up. Again, one person, whoever that was, thank you for laying out a very clear process that I just, was able to transfer over. People want to know who will be reviewing their complaint, right? When they expect an answer, when should they expect an answer? What resources are available to help them with trauma as it relates to the incident? And where they can call and follow up if they didn't hear back within a given time frame. So again, I think this, and we have more here, but someone else also mentioned something very thoughtful too, which is like, there's not a blanket answer, right? So recognizing that these types of issues can be complex. And so depending on the nature of the complaint, there might be that we need to explain that there are different processes depending on the complaint. I think that's also a really good point for us to consider as we move forward. And again, people just asking for that transparency, right? That when someone files a complaint with us, with the commission, if it were to be reestablished, that we offer them a clear process from start to finish so that they're not feeling confused or unsure, that we've offered them all the information they need to know from start to finish, this is what your process will look like. Again, next steps, what to expect, information about how the process goes, And again, that we commit to a timely response, right? That this is not a long process, that we offer them some sort of time frame that we will try to respond to them and their case. People wanted, again, asking should there be an ad hoc or established committee for every complaint, right? Again, this is sort of, if it's reestablished, what does the process look like? Some people suggested just doing an initial review. People said it should be ad hoc, so we only meet as needed. Some people said a full hearing for any case. Again, those people sort of thinking ahead, it depends on the nature of the complaint. And then 2 people did offer that maybe if we had staff support, that there would be a way to screen it and then sort of distribute it based on some sort of rules that would be decided upon by the commission. And this was a big question. So the way I broke it down, here's the full question, but then we'll get to individually. And I think here you'll see that we have some decisions to make, or there's going to be a lot of discussion around this. So in thinking about the size, and I actually have 2 slides for this. So, people had a lot of thoughts, right? So, some people said 6 to 9, some people said 7 to 12. Some people put caps no more than 15. Then as we move forward, I just did it by size, but people advocated for more. Some people offered, an odd number, which I guess would maybe be to break ties if there was a, split vote. And then someone again was kind of thoughtful thinking through this. Well, it depends on how many complaints we get, right? And so it depends, right? So again, we might think about what this looks like. They suggested up to 60. But then maybe reducing it, right? So again, thinking about what's the commission going to look like? And then, someone said 15 to 18, depending on populations represented. So I think these are, again, just things that we should plan to discuss as we move forward. Again, large enough to handle the business. Someone suggested 40 with the sunset. Once certain aspects are fulfilled, right? I think this person was maybe thinking initially we might receive a lot of complaints because maybe there's a backlog, but then eventually 40 would be too many. So again, these are just things for us to consider as we move forward. Again, as we think about designing the proposal and thinking about what the commission will look like, we need to think about what terms look like. People, 11 people did say a 2-year term. People thought about initially like a 2-year term, but then initially because we can't all be on the same, or people can't be all on the same 2-year term, that there might be some initial staggering just for continuity, but then after that it would stagger. Some people said 3 years. Again, people offered rotations. 3 years with term limits and a maximum of 3 terms, right? Again, thinking about sort of, really designing it and being very transparent about how the commission will be staffed and filled. 5-year max, right? People mentioned, again, the staggering so that there's some continuity. And then when we asked about whether or not HRC members should represent the geography of the city, again, 8 said yes, 3 said no. People said it might be good to think about doing ward appointments so that we do cover the geography of the city. Someone did mention it shouldn't be anything about geography or demographics. Let's focus on skills. So that might be part of the way that we write it, or even part of the application process for people applying to the commission, asking what skills people have. When asked about demographic representation, right, 14 said yes, 3 said no, and then people laid out different types of demographics that might need to be represented. Again, I think we can return to this, but it is to, again, just to get our minds thinking about this. Is hopefully we'll have some information coming out of some of the working groups to help us think about what's the best practice about this and how should we think about it for our city. And then finally, I did include this miscellaneous slide just because I thought that people made some good points here. I think that we do need to think about what's the process by which people are removed, right? So if you don't show up for several meetings, if you're serving on the commission, is that a reason to remove, or is it only, right? So I think, again, this person was thoughtful. Let's try to think about the ways in which we both, fill the commission, and then what would be some reasons why someone might not be asked to serve again, or maybe be asked to not serve currently. And again, I think this person, we are looking, so we'll hear from the case studies report, but other people are doing research, right? So I think it's true. We should think about what other people are doing and then assess that in relation to the best needs of our city. And then again, someone said, let's talk about it in the meeting, and I respect that. So that's it. I'll take any questions now. Let me stop sharing my screen. I don't know if I can see everyone. Okay.
I know we had one from David Hall. He had his hand raised. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand so we can properly recognize you. Thank you.
Thank you. So my question is simple. It's just knowing how the council processes work as it relates to the budget. Will the Policy and Legislation Committee need to be the ones to sort of quote unquote write that budget piece, or will that be something that we do as a larger group?
I think it could go either way. It might be that the Policy and Legislation group does some initial research. What are other budgets look like? What do other budgets look like for HRCs in other places? Just to give us a range. We would want to know how big those cities are. Obviously, probably the New York City budget isn't going to inform our budget, but also a small town budget isn't going to inform our budget either. And then I think maybe to my mind, and I don't want to speak for the other co-chairs, but to my mind, it would be something that if it came out of that committee, it would be something to be discussed, because at the point we are, asking for the reestablishment, if there's a budget request, I think it would need to get a consensus out of this group as well. But I think that's a really good question. And it's something I know for case studies we're also considering, and it's part of one of our evaluation tools, as well as what budget does the HRC have or the department. So our committee will also have some of that data as well. But that's a great question. Yep. Ayana, I see you. Go ahead. Are you? Oh, okay. Is it just, I don't know, is it just me? I can't hear.
It doesn't look like her microphone is connected.
Okay, maybe she can type her question in the chat. I don't know. Is there a chat?
I think I spoke too soon. I don't think we have one.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, we can come back to her.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. The quick, I guess what I'm thinking about is that how do we make this a priority? Because you were talking about the New York City or the New York budget. Needless to say, there have been monies put into a variety of things in this town that you would think, oh, wow, they spent that much money on that. And then, so how do we, from, I guess, a priority perspective, make, the commission a priority? So when it's time to consider a budget, that this is given the amount of money that it needs. I'm through.
I think that's an excellent question. I don't know if I have the answer that I want recorded on this live YouTube. So I think that's something that we will discuss, but I take your point, right? That as we move forward, the recommendation that comes out of this group, I think that's an appropriate question. What's the best way to achieve our goal, which is, I think, to reestablish and also to make it a priority. And so I think I'll just note that I don't have a good answer right now.
I guess the Councilwoman Nice, from the perspective of, and she may be able to provide some guidance there, or even some of the staff people, when there have been situations where there have been designated, budgets required for different things, what has been the best approach in terms of being able to, in the one case, have a staff person or several staff people, or is that something that we may be able to look at how other cities have been able to do it in terms of making it a priority in their town? Therefore, we could probably try to use some of their strategies in terms of lobbying for money.
I think that would be what you said would be the best approach, in my opinion, as far as with this working group and this committee. That's what we want to figure out, how we want this to operate and the best way to move forward with the process. So that's what we will be deciding as far as if we want a staff member to be a part of this, what that looks like. And again, comparing to the peer cities, that's how I receive that. And I know we could probably discuss this further with our municipal council just to see what our other options are and bring that back to this particular task force meeting next month. But we can truly look at all of those options as well.
I do have one little quick question. I was a little confused whether the committee that's looking at other cities, is that the case study research on HRC's working group?
Correct.
Okay. Is that what you wrote with Dr. Benjamin?
I'm not over it, but we are going to talk about because we need a co-chair. So yes.
Okay. I was interested in that, and I thought that I missed another working group meeting, and I was saying, but I don't even think I signed up for that, so I wasn't quite sure.
Well, that is your working group. So yes.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
just wrote
cool.
down that I think we should add that to our evaluation is what did other cities do to get their HRC? So I just wrote that down and I can add that to our work plan.
Okay. We can talk later then. Thank you.
Let's see, Seth, I see you. And then Reverend Crudup, I got you next. If I missed anyone, I'll move my screen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say thank you for all the work that you put into the presentation. Very informative. A question that I have is, are you going to take some of the just kind of views that were done off of the poll and submit those findings down to the subcommittee so we can consider those views as we do our work?
Yes, actually, I already have a anonymous version and I can send it to the working group. So yeah, let me just make a note to myself and I can make that available to everyone. That's perfectly fine. Yep. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
My question was answered during the exchange. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, let me scroll. Am I missing anyone else that has their hand up? Okay, so yeah, I will make that, I will get that email to everyone so you can see the raw responses. I think that's great. Yep, perfect.
Okay, if there are no other comments or questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. We are very efficient tonight. I appreciate that, y'all. Working group reports, and this is presented by the committee chair and co-chairs. So again, I want to give you all of the different working groups, case study research on HRC's policy and legislation. We also have status of human rights in the city, data collection and analysis, and working relationships. So we'll go in order of which they are listed for, and Dr. Benjamin, I'm not sure if you wanted to facilitate that part as well.
And so, Councilwoman, I have the action plans that I can share on my screen, and we can go through them in order, if that works.
Ms.
Okay.
Jane, do your thing.
Okay, is that working? You can see action plan? Okay, very good. So I just have them in order. So whoever wants to talk about the case study.
Okay,
research.
I'm gonna chime in here, but this is really the last thing. So I did have one volunteer, I will not say that person's name. I did have one person volunteer to co-chair, but they did not want to chair by themselves. So this is really an open call. I think we've set up a nice framework in our first meeting, and we have some people that are handling some of the larger tasks, like someone is organizing the doodle to set our meeting, someone's setting up a group meet. So really, if there's someone who wants to co-chair, I'm really asking, please volunteer. We have almost everything we need. We just need to do the work. So Ayana, is that you volunteering to co-chair?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So I'll just do this briefly because I don't want to, because the other person, I didn't ask them to do it. But basically, as I was just explaining and sort of through the Q&A, this working group is really tasked with doing research. So we spent a lot of time selecting peer cities, those that have an HRC and a department, those that only have an HRC, those that only have a department, and those that have neither. And we are reading a report about HRCs out of Columbia so that we can evaluate what is the way that human rights violations are handled in this city. And we have some criteria that we've tried to lay out here. How basically just what did they do? We'll ask about their budget. We'll try to understand how do they build their commission? What are the membership requirements? What are the terms? What's the capacity? What do they actually do? What groups are protected in their city? how many cases do they review each year, how many reports do they issue, and anything special about that HRC. And again, we're currently just doing some research on HRC so that we'll have that. And then within that, we are sort of breaking up into groups to pick our cities, and we'll complete Google Forms that will help us sort of consolidate that data so that when we present to you all, we'll be able to answer questions such as, where did they get their money from? How many staff work for them? What do they actually do? And so as we move forward, we're going to try to examine those cities, again, do the in-depth research, come together and try to then evaluate each city based on what we found, try to develop some best practices, maybe pull some language and see how they were able to do things. Again, figure out what's missing, right? And one thing I should keep in mind is that even the cities that don't have an HRC or a department, the research question there is, how is that city handling any potential human rights violations? And again, we think that that will be useful. We do have the charter language from the last, our last HRC here in the city, so we will use that as also a guidepost for what we do. We think that's really important. And then hopefully by December, we'll be able to make some recommendations about the best practices as it relates to human rights in what we consider our peer cities. So I will leave it there. Thank you, Jane.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the next group I have a action plan for is the policy and legislation group.
So for the policy and legislation, for us, we have that our objective is to determine the current or proposed enabling or prohibiting local or state law as it relates to the HRC. For our indicators, just because as policy and legislation, there's really not much we can do other than, we have the statute or I should say the framework, or we don't. That's really our end goal. So right now ours is kind of broad in that we have statutory and administrative frameworks researched and made available. And then we have statutory and administrative frameworks researched and proposed for the City of Oklahoma City, Human Rights Commission, and City of Oklahoma City. With that, we did not go too far in our action plan as far as dates go, only because our specific committee will need to be very reciprocal, and this is just sort of an FYI to everyone. Our committee will really need to be reciprocal with others, just because we're basically implementing all of the things that you guys find. So because of that, we didn't want to get too far ahead of everyone's work. But that said, we are at least sort of getting to high levels in that we are going to be researching protected classes in quote unquote places of rights. So, public accommodations, things, environmental justice, things like that. Human Rights Commission structures, sort of, like you guys you all are doing. And I'm sure some of what we'll find will come from there, and we'll share what we find as well. And then with that, some of what we're also looking at more specifically is and what will be important for the end result will be the enforcement of our human rights. Make sure everyone is on mute. Make sure everyone's on mute.
I think we good now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, and then just in case anyone missed it, sorry, we are also going to be making sure just the enforcement piece is a very important aspect. So we'll also be researching a little bit with that of how people ensure that whatever they've done is actually enforced. And then just as far as authority goes, relationship of human rights involved agencies, whether that's the AG or not. We do have some clarifying questions, but those will be more offline that we need to find out. And then just as far as, how far our role might go. And then we're also going to research the former City of Oklahoma City statute that had the Human Rights Commission in it. Just as sort of, not to say that we're going to use that, copy and paste, but, has already been in there, passed all the legalese, etc. So it is nice to know what the quote unquote base would look like. Other than that, our plan is to have a quote unquote broad goal. Don't worry, we'll think of a better version, but a broad proposed framework that is sort of our end goal that encapsulates everything we think truly needs to be addressed within human rights, whether we are able to put that in statute or not. And then we'll have a tailored, like taken from that, we'll have a sort of tailored proposal that we know for a fact can work within the legal confines that we have as a Human Rights Commission.
Okay.
I know we had some hands raised, Ms. Jane. So I do want to, before we go to the second two, see if we have any questions. I know we had questions for maybe the first two combined, so I don't want to get too far ahead if we before we answer those questions. And I see hands raised, and I would like to make sure I get them. Sade.
Hello, Councilwoman Nikki Nice. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. So my question is that I received an email saying that I was supposed to participate in the policy and legislation meeting working group, but I never received like a Zoom invite. So I just want to make sure that I can participate in the next group working session.
Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure we have a correct email for you. And if you'll text me your email address, I just want to make sure that's what we have recorded. We'll make sure we get engaged in the conversation. And we'll have David, if you don't mind, we'll have you reach out and we can connect to play our day where we need to in this group. Miss Ayana.
Yes, you, David, you mentioned something about collaborating with I guess the status of human rights in the city group, because you had mentioned something about looking at what the policies may have been in the past. Is that your intent?
So I'm not sure I understand your question.
You mentioned something about looking at what the policies had been in the past. There's a group, another working group called the Status of Human Rights in the City. I'm not sure if that was part of their mission, or was that something, was what you were talking about in terms of previous policies separate from I guess the question would probably go to you, Councilwoman Nice, whether the status of human rights in the city was different in terms of looking at previous policies.
So it was more just for that specific piece, it was more just knowing that we would have an actual language that we could use and understand how it worked. We would just look at the former basically, law around how the Human Rights Commission was actually established for us. And then we would just, like I said, we would have that as more like a sort of a draft that we would edit ourselves while we're waiting to, to establish all that we do through our committee, through working with other committee members, things like that, and waiting on basically, city attorneys to, actually write the language for real.
I see. I had one other question. When you mentioned the word a broad goal, were you looking for the word comprehensive?
Yeah. I mean,
okay. All right.
It's probably.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see any more hands raised. Were there any? If not, we'll move on to group 3.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so, and this is the status of human rights in the city, which is data collection and analytics.
Hi, everyone. It's Jason Henderson. So we met on Tuesday to go over our plan of action there. So we're going to basically use the Tulsa equality indicators and kind of mirror their framework on what's been done there. We kind of broke it into different markets because it is a broad spectrum. It does cover housing, education, public health, economic opportunities, justice, and then services across the board. We're doing individual research to see what indicators we have in the city today within a 5-year window of current data. And building from that, so we really get into those things. There is, if you all haven't heard of the Tulsa Equality Indicators, it's a very broad, robust website that they spent a ton of money on. That I know we don't have the resources for, but we're trying to see what we can do to kind of mirror that, because there is some great resources there that could be a good blanket for the entire city to target different areas that would touch all markets there. So we're going to meet in a couple of weeks again to go over this kind of thing. So Dr. Heron and I are the co-chairs of this together, and we have a great committee there with us to kind of make sure that we can present something to you all with more data points and kind of where we stand in the coming weeks.
I don't see any hands raised, so we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, and then the last group is the working relationships group.
Good evening, everyone. So our objective, we decided, was to establish interagency understanding as it relates to education, investigation, and enforcement of HR-related matters. Dr. Benjamin mentioned earlier during her presentation that there were several comments, I think, in the questionnaires about, hey, are we going to expand the scope of what a potential HRC could do? So that is something that could also be altered, I guess, in what we look at. So our indicators, we wanted to first develop an internal type of matrix or an evaluation checklist for these identified agencies. And we did that. We identified basically a handful of agencies. And we want to further examine the depth of their relationship. So that commitment from the agency, what does that look like? How many cases have been brought to HR? Mainly, what does resolution look like? Because a number of cases could be brought, or a number of issues, but what happens? Do they stall out? What is their process? What does resolution look like? Evaluation of each of those agencies that we identified. What is their overall human rights response? Do they have SOPs? Do they have, so standard operating procedures? Do they have some type of formal identified HR education? Is there a handbook? Is there maybe, for lack of a better term, an ombudsman person in a role in their in that agency or in that job? What else did we think about? We wanted to be sure that we were, if necessary, educating employers on laws. We wanted to make sure that we had a matrix of best practices, and what I like to call a bingo card of sorts, to kind of check off what they do and what they don't do. And we also wanted to, let's see, one of our indicators, we want to get in touch with the different agencies for data, definitely EEOC, but also get with nonprofits. I think we did also highlight the Center for Community and Justice in Tulsa. Let's see, we also looked at short and long-term goals, and we wanted to be sure to split, or at least identify, agencies and nonprofits and for-profits, and maybe even schools. So that came up. For us, we want to, so under our activities to achieve that objective, like we said, identifying these agencies, we want to determine the scope of work for each agency and the key points of contact. Develop that internal matrix or evaluation checklist, again, a bingo card for us. And then lastly, possibly finalize that objective with an executive summary that synthesizes everything that we did and the steps that we took.
Thank you, Dr. Angel. Are there any overall questions? And thank you all, because these obviously we are ready to do the work, and we have a lot of work to do, and that shows from the presentations from our working groups. And thank you all, and we'll make sure for those who were not able to participate in the last one that you will be a part of the next conversation and going forward. So again, Miss Ayana.
I just had one quick question. When you were talking about the agencies you were going to look at, was the Department of Commerce, because at one point I understand there was some designation around contracts being given out to in some equitable way, as it were. Was the Department of Commerce down on your list by chance?
It was not, Miss Ayana, but I have added it for consideration. Thank you very much.
I don't know who gives out the contract money, but I would think the Department of Commerce would be could possibly be at the top of the list in terms of who gets what in terms of major contracts. And it's, I understand they did away with that at one point. Maybe one of the other committees was going to look at that as it relates to the economic component, is what I was concerned about.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Anyone else? Representative Brano.
It's the office OMES that handles the majority of the state contracts. And then those that are related to specific departments, like the Department of Transportation or the Department of Commerce, Banking. Each one of those would then also have contracts, most of which are still managed through OMES.
Thank you. I have that as well.
Any other feedback or questions? Okay. All right, I have members to be heard. Do we have any members that would like to be heard? Please unmute. And I see David Hall first. That's the one hand that I do see. If there are any more, please unmute and speak afterwards.
I just wanted to say, and I can just maybe go through Jane to make it easier on everyone, but I just want to say, like I said, our policy and legislation is going to need to be much more reciprocal for sure with other groups. So just know that after you guys meet, that in the future, and I'll get all this sorted out myself, but after you guys meet, it'd be great if we could just receive your notes after, so that way we can sort of have that feedback loop. And I promise I won't bug you unless we actually have questions about it.
And it is recorded, so he promised he will not bug you. So, are there any other hands? Miss Ayana, you're unmuted, so I'm assuming you have something.
No, as a matter of fact, I was just getting ready to mute myself.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? Any other members? Okay. I have.
I do have one thing to say. I just want to congratulate all the different working groups. They've been working like little beavers. And so congratulations. And also to you, Councilwoman and Dr. Benjamin. I'm so happy that I'm around a bunch of smart people. That makes me warm my heart.
You know what they say, iron sharpens iron. So we appreciate that. And I heard beavers definitely get the work done. So. Okay, I know we had, do we have any public comment? If you, I didn't
No,
receive it.
Councilwoman, we do not.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I recognize that. Y'all, we will be finished before 7. I am so excited for all of us. Yes, happy fingers for everybody. So our next meeting will be October 29th at 6 p.m. And Again, thank you for all of your dedication and work, because as you see, this is going to need our dedication in order for us to ensure that we are protecting the human rights of our city, and to protect everyone that comes to our city and decides to call it home. So we want to make sure we're doing that. So thank you for all of your dedication and your work. Dr. Benjamin, do you have anything before we let everyone go?
Yeah, I do want to see if Moriana wants to say anything since she just hopped on, but also if for some reason, I know if you didn't receive an email about what working group you're in, please email me. My email is abenjamin59@gmail.com, or contact Jane. We just want to make sure that people were aware. And I know within each working group, please be on the lookout for an email from your the co-chairs of those working groups, because they're going to be the ones that organize your working group meeting. So again, if you haven't been getting these emails, if you haven't received a follow-up about a doodle or something, please be in touch with us or let Jane know. But we just want to make sure that people are aware and that they know, things come up, but that you're aware of the working group meetings so that you can participate in them, because we do think everyone is really important and we do want to make it accessible and at a time that works for people. So especially now, as your group is planning to get those meetings scheduled, make sure that we have your correct contact information.
Mariana, did you have anything to add before we?
I don't. I apologize. I had a conflict this evening, but I'm really excited. I touched base with several working group members across the different work groups, and it sounds like you all were really productive and able to provide some meaningful contributions. So I just look forward to what comes from the work groups and the task force.
I see a video or a message that were questions on the board. So if there are any, just unmute and ask. Okay. Speak now or forever hold your peace until October 29th.
I see Anna Harmon has her hand raised. Is that a question? And I also see, someone else put their hand. Sorry.
Yes, it is. I see Anna does. That's where we do have that message. So we'll definitely.
Yes, I had a question. I was wondering if there was anyone that could provide notes. Because when I'm watching the interpreter on the computer, it's hard for me to get notes. So is there any way I could get a copy of notes?
We will make sure she has that you have notes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all?
I think Miguel raised his hand. I saw it up there.
Lieutenant, you have a question or comment?
No, ma'am. That was a mistake. I'm sorry. I have my hands are too big for this technology.
You just wanted to get some screen time. Well, we gave it to you. It's all good.
All right. Well, thank you. It's good to see you all. It's good to see all your beautiful faces. That's the only thing I have to say.
Oh, wow.
We appreciate that. Okay. I have 6:58. And with that, I will say we are adjourned. But again, please make sure you're being engaged with our working group so we can make sure we're getting the work done. With that, I say good night. And
could I make one announcement right quick? For all the groups, I just want to encourage you to encourage your organizations to continue to register to vote. I know this is a human rights meeting, but we're getting closer to the election, and it's so important that everybody is registered all over the city. What Lies Between Us, which is one of the groups I represent, we launched a campaign called Make Your Vote Count. And so you possibly saw yard signs all over the city, just encouraging people, as well as flyers around town with the churches, the mosque, and the synagogues. And I wanted to tell Councilwoman Nice that, you know, congratulate you on the work of trying to get people to the polls. That's so important. So I just wanted to make that announcement. My final announcement is between now and the time we meet again, I will be turning 70. So I'll be accepting congratulatory messages, gifts, money for the whole month of October.
Woohoo!
Do we need to sing now or wait till next month?
No, wait till October. My birthday is October 11th.
Well, I guess everybody has Miss Ayana's email address. Feel free to.
I'm gonna tell you, I never thought that was gonna be a big deal for me. When I turned 50, it was like nobody wants to know you're turning 50, so I kept it to myself. But now that I'm getting older, you know, hey, I'm happy to be alive considering we're in this virus situation. So.
Absolutely. 2020 has helped us realize a lot of things are very precious, including you turning 70. So thank you for sharing. We wish you a beautiful birthday next month. So we'll sing and everybody will have our party hats on for next month. All right, y'all. It's time to go. So y'all, I'll talk to y'all next month and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.